Hamster wheel and into balanced living on ubnradio.com.
And welcome. My name is Dr. Marissa, your cheerleader for a happy life 88% of the time, and trying to meet hope before it gets into expectations so you can't be disappointed. And you're listening to my weekly talk radio show called Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa, exclusively on ubnradio.com on your phone or computer every Tuesday at naturally high noon. And we're broadcasting out of the Sunset Gower Studios in Hollywood, California. And I'm here with my good-looking station manager, Tony Sweet, and my fabulous sound engineer, Eric Montgomery. And today, and if you're tuning into the show for the first time, this is a show about happiness and how you can be that 88% time. Encourages you to put on a life jacket with a silver lining. I want you to watch less reality TV and tune into your own life and find ways to be more happy. So on this show, there's no CNN, constantly negative news, and no gossip, no scandal, and no K-words, Kardashians. I'm your host, Dr. Marissa Pay, an organizational psychologist that's been working with individuals, groups, and companies for over 22 years, bringing balanced concepts and processes to increase joy and minimize stress. And because I am so shy, sarcasm intended, I varied on there. I've been traveling around the world as a motivational speaker, encouraging you to jump off that hamster wheel into balanced living. You may have also caught me on several Discovery Channel or Learning Channel specials commenting on why people do weird things at work. Well, the first one was Fox, Busted on the Job, where I had to explain why a disgruntled employee was peeing in a coffee pot. You might have seen that over the holidays. They replay that one, much to my chagrin. You can also see a better clip of me on KUSI.com, News San Diego, where I am talking about, are relationships difficult? And yes, it was a trick question. And because it's Valentine's month, I wanted to go hot and heavy and talk about love, romance, and sex. Last week, I laughed my booty off talking about booty calls with Dr. Pat Allen, and if you missed that, you can get it on YouTube now. It's funny. I'm rarely at a loss for words, but on the YouTube, you can see where I am and reacting to Eric laughing his booty off. Today, I am really, really pleased to have Dr. Robin Milhausen, and she's a professor of human sexuality and family relations at the University of Guelph in Canada. Many of you know that I was actually born in Canada and found out after I Googled her. I put in sex and toys and went straight to her page, and we just found out that we were born in the same hospital, which is unbelievable, in a little town in Canada. She's a popular sex educator, currently on a speaking tour of Canadian universities and colleges, sponsored by Trojan, talking about sexual pleasure and sexual health. Dr. Milhausen's research focuses on gender and sexuality, desire, problems, and arousal. Without further ado, please welcome to my studio, Dr. Robin Milhausen.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome.
Great to be here. Great introduction. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to come on the air and to talk about something that, honestly, I had a great time doing research for this show. So much so that I think I'm going to really make this a monthly episode because I'm determined to make pleasure G-rated. So we'll begin with safe sex, or save something, and then get a little deeper and a little longer and a little harder.
That's usually the way it goes.
Oh boy, I'm going to be in so much trouble. So for the fun stuff, let's talk first. You had a show before called Sex, Chocolate, and Toys, or maybe not in that order. What would you talk about on that show, just so that I understand exactly the depth that you get into?
Sure. It was a really fun show. I think one of the best parts of it was I had a male co-host, and so we would separate our small studio audience into men and women, and I would talk to the women first about the issue. My male co-host would talk to the men, and then we'd all come together and be able to say, well, guys, why do you really think this? Is this really the way it is? And we kind of got the straight goods on sex and relationships, and we got a chance to actually ask members of the other sex why they do the things they do. But we covered everything from internet dating to pornography use to sex toys. That we filmed over 80 episodes.
Wow.
And we did not run out of things to talk about.
I bet. I know that we've been, in preparing for this show, I've got a list of questions that'll probably take us for a week. So, but let's start with when you would talk on that show, was there embarrassment? Or I know even when I was doing the research, I got on some sites and I caught myself blushing, or I told people that I was doing an episode on sex and people would go, whoa, and there would be that like nervous little look on their face. Why is it so difficult to talk about sex toys, orgasms, pleasure?
I think because it's hedonistic. I mean, we don't feel entitled to have pleasure. Really, I think we're a little sheepish about experiencing pleasure in a lot of different facets of our life. And then when you take sexual pleasure, the taboo associated with sexuality just takes it up to that next level. It's much easier to talk about the risks and dangers involved with sex. When I'm sitting beside somebody on an airplane, I always do a 5-second judgment. Okay, am I going to tell you what I really do for a living, or maybe should I just say I study health? So you can usually tell within a few seconds whether a person's going to be really interested in that conversation, and I've had a lot of great plane rides with a captive audience.
I bet. And I'm all about balance. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to do this is because exactly that discomfort, a lot of it comes from, you think sex and you think automatically porn, dirty, wrong, embarrassing, and really, in my own life and discovery, I'm beginning to really feel and understand that, pleasure is a gift of life, and to sort of not talk about it or not deal with it or not understand it or not enjoy it, it seems like such a loss. It seems unbalanced and unfair. So anyways, that's one of the reasons why I'm bringing you on. But let's talk about what is an orgasm. So definition of orgasm.
Yes. Well, and I think women wonder, am I having an orgasm? Is this an orgasm? Does this count as an orgasm? Orgasms are elusive, and women don't have orgasms every single time they have sex, nor do men. So people may have questions about what an orgasm is because they haven't experienced it.
But isn't it true that more men have orgasms than women?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is much more common for men to have orgasms every time they have sex, but it is not every single time, as many women think. Especially as men age, they may have more erectile difficulties or orgasmic difficulties, so it may not be every single time, but it's much less often for women. So only about a quarter of women have orgasms every time they have sex. But the definition you asked, at a technical level, they are muscular contractions that occur in response to sexual stimulation that send blood that is generated in the genital area back to other parts of the body. So it is the contractions and the accompaniment of a pleasurable sensation that we define as orgasm.
Okay. So let me go back to the statistic. The more men have orgasms, and tell me if I'm, this is just from personal experience. It seems like, or what I hear from my friends, it seems like the goal of a lovemaking session for most men is an orgasm. For women, it seems like, the intimacy or the connection or that emotional feeling is sort of just as important or more important than the orgasm. Ergo, if we don't have an orgasm, it's not the end of the world.
And there is a lot of really interesting research on this. We could have a whole hour about orgasm. So yes, the research does suggest that women are less invested in having an orgasm every time, but maybe that's because it's so difficult for them. They've just gotten used to the fact that it doesn't happen every time. So they adjust their expectations in accordance with frequency.
Right.
But a really great study of women, where women were interviewed about orgasm, they described feeling more pressure to have orgasms for their male partners. It's really associated with the male performance script to be able to give a woman an orgasm. And often women wait for the perfect partner to give them an orgasm. And so we may be motivated to make an orgasm happen more for our male partners if we're partnered with men than for our own benefit. Because, there are many, many pleasurable sensations that come with sex in the absence of orgasm.
Yes, and therein lies some of the statistics that I found on faking orgasms. That most
and my master's student actually did the largest study about motivations for faking orgasm that's been done, and we're working on writing up the manuscript for publication. But she found some really interesting facts about faking. If you want to talk about them now,
please.
Sure.
I would love to. Is
So
it okay with her?
Men and women were commonly reported faking orgasm at least sometimes. And the most common reason was to make their partner feel good about themselves. And 83% of men who had faked orgasms said they did it because they wanted to make their partner feel good about themselves. And 95% of women who faked orgasms said they did it because they wanted to make their partner feel good about themselves. But there are a few different reasons why people might fake orgasm.
Okay.
So men were more likely to fake orgasm if they'd been drinking or they were too intoxicated to actually have an orgasm. So they faked it because they knew it wouldn't happen.
Okay.
Men were more likely to fake an orgasm if the sex wasn't good or if they weren't really into their partner.
Okay. Get out early.
Yeah. Both men and women were likely to fake if they just didn't really want to be having the sex. So they cared about the partner, but they were thinking about Grey's Anatomy or the hockey game or something. So they were interested in the partner, but they were just kind of ready to get the sex over with.
Okay.
And women were likely to fight because of a timing issue. They wanted to have the simultaneous orgasm, which is like the holy grail of orgasm, having men and women have an orgasm at the same time.
Right.
And it really is the holy grail because our sexual response cycles make that really difficult to have happen.
Talk about that for a bit. Oh,
sure.
Sorry. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, one more reason.
Yes, please.
So you might fake orgasm just to sort of feel like you are normal, you're sexually healthy, you don't have sexual problems, or your relationship is normal. So sort of insecurity reasons. And both men and women were equally likely to report those.
Okay. And actually, there was a British study that like up to 80% of the women faked orgasms, whereas for men it's 30% instead of 80%.
Those numbers sound about right.
Yeah, that's a big number. So the physiology. So it is more. It's just physically. It's a physiological fact that it's more difficult for women to get to an orgasm than a man. Is that
the same timing? So this, I love telling people this. Let me ask you this bit of trivia.
All right.
How long do you think it takes the average 16-year-old male to masturbate to orgasm?
2 seconds.
90 seconds on average. I saw one stat. 90 seconds. So men have been training themselves to be like sprinter masturbators and sprinter orgasm. They're very worried that someone might walk in, their sister might come in, their mom might interrupt when they're teenagers. So they learn to train their bodies to be super fast.
Right.
And then all of a sudden in partnered relationships, and whether they're partnered with women or men, later in life, it all of a sudden becomes desirable to have longer sexual encounters. So men are working against all that early adolescent training. Which is tricky.
Right.
And women typically take about 20 minutes of sexual stimulation to have an orgasm, but that does vary. And it depends how much foreplay is happening before actual penetration occurs, if there's penetration happening. But if the sexual cycle for a man is like 5-6 minutes and he's partnered with a woman who has more of a 20-25 minute sexual cycle, the chances she's going to be able to get her body up to speed at that time is rare. And then she may be feeling all this internal pressure to make it happen, which makes it even less likely that it's going to happen.
Yes, definitely. That, they're going to get bored or they're just waiting and I'm taking too long. Yeah. So, and that's, I think it's great. One of the reasons why I want to talk about it is what I've realized a little later on in life is that the orgasm itself is a healthy thing. So if I can get past all of the, the religious or the shame or all of that, the fear or the darkness, that really, if I'm about loving myself, I can actually love myself literally, and have this. I looked up. There's health benefits to orgasm, pain relief, oxytocins and endorphins relieve headaches, muscle cramps, and overall body aches. It helps better sleep, deep relaxation that follows orgasm. Strength, increased blood flow to the brain and heart result in more oxygen to the organs and better performance in and out of the bedroom. Fitness, I love this one. Sexual intercourse burns 150 calories every half hour and improves body image. Higher testosterone and estrogen levels fortify bones and muscles. Energy and creativity, that's number 5. Hormones released during sexual activity improve cognition functions, get smarter, more creative, opening the mind. And then the last one, also huge, here's the fountain of youth, longer life. 2 orgasms a week can increase your lifespan. So the hormone, I guess, DHEA boosts the immune system, repairs organ tissues, and along with other hormones leads to greater happiness, one of the best indicators of longevity. And that's all those stats are thanks to Dr. Gail Feldman's blog and sexpert Dr. Lori Ains, who's today's show sponsor. So so the twice a week, that's the research. So then, of course, I'm going to push the edge of the envelope and say, what about every day? I mean, an orgasm a day chases the blues away. Do you have any research around the number of orgasms that are good for you?
No, I think you're right that unless the number of orgasms you're having is getting in the way of your ability to maintain relationships and get to your job on time,
yes,
causing
thank
chafing,
you for bringing
then we can have a problem. But I also think it's important to say that it doesn't necessarily have to be an orgasm. So some of this research talks about actual benefits of orgasm, but some of it talks about just the health benefits of sex. And I think we can even extrapolate that to the benefits of being in a happy relationship, however you define relationship. If you're connecting with another person on an intimate level or multiple persons, that emotional warmth, social support, and physical pleasure, all those things are good for you. And I think all of those things can lead to stress relief and, better physical health. So I don't think we need to put pressure on ourselves to say, we got to have it because of the orgasm. I think the sex and the connection, the physical connection, have a ton of benefits as well.
Yes, good point. It's that overall, it's not just the orgasm, it's the whole, what's around the orgasm.
Yeah.
And
I once did a talk for some dentists and hygienists. So they had invited me to come and be their keynote speaker at a dentist and hygienist conference. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to make the link between sexuality and dentistry?
I'm not going to say anything.
I searched long and hard to find this one statistic, and that is that seminal plasma contains zinc, calcium, and other minerals shown to prevent tooth decay. So swishing with semen may give you better oral health.
I love it.
There's another benefit. I bet you're going to have some male listeners who are going to be using that one tonight.
Oh, yeah. My girlfriend that says she doesn't swallow is not going to be happy to hear that one.
Yep.
But let me, I agree. And let's talk again about bring the balance up. Because I am not talking about, that movie, Thank You for Sharing, was an interesting about sexual addiction. And certainly we don't want to go to the extreme. So everything is about orgasm. Everything's about sex. Everything's about staying in bed. Everything's about, connection with a partner so that you don't work, you don't think, you don't, have any other relationship. So there's balance. But I again, even though it's not just about the orgasm, I do want to make the point that for many women, many successful women, many women that come into midlife crisis time, in it that I see in my life balance coaching process, the question that is just amazing to me when I say, you know, how is your sex life, or how many times do you orgasm, or do you pleasure, you know, do you get pleasure from yourself? Do you make love with yourself? And it's either I don't have time for it, or I don't get turned on, or it takes too long, or, you know, I just, it's not worth, or I don't know how, or I don't know if I have a G-spot. So all of those things really take a detriment, or there's a loss of something that is just a gift of life, that pleasure that comes from that specific. So when you talk about toys, and there's like, you know, smirking or oh ha ha, I really am, you know, I love that Kim Cattrall in Sex and the City, that one episode, you know, she's having a date with her vibrator because that's, you know, she doesn't want to go out, but she wants that release, or she wants that, you know, that wonderful feeling that comes from having an orgasm. So is there room for women to get more comfortable around, you know, taking that time and discovering parts of their body, or making the time as part of their daily routine, or twice a week routine if we go to the health benefits, to actually do that?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things at play here that make this difficult for women, and all of the concerns that you say you hear, those are exactly the same ones I hear, especially for women between 30 and 45 years old. I think, you know, for one thing, women don't take time to take care of themselves and their needs. You know, they're the bottom of the list. Have I done everything I need to do for work? Have I done everything I need to do for my partner? Have I done everything I need for my children? And at the end of the day, week, month, there's not a lot of time or energy left to do something that is just for you. And I think also women are socialized to think that maybe they shouldn't be doing stuff that's just for them.
Exactly.
And then you take that with the taboo that comes with sexuality, especially for women, because we get these messages when we're adolescents that we're going to get pregnant or get an STI. Males don't get the same danger messages that females do when they're growing up about sexuality.
The only thing is that you're going to go blind. That's the only one that I've ever heard.
And we internalize those messages. So we feel like if we are sexual, it's dirty and shameful and we shouldn't be doing it. And even our own genitalia, what makes me so sad when I teach large undergraduate classes in sexuality is the number of women that are literally repulsed by their vagina and vulva, like literally repulsed, like can't bear to look there, to touch there. And if you're going from that perspective, there's no way you're going to be able to have an orgasm. I mean, literally disgusted by their own bodies, and it's so sad. And they're just kind of hoping they can close their eyes, look away, and someone will make magic happen for them. So I make it a real goal in my sexuality classes when I have students for a whole semester as a captive audience to really get women thinking about they're entitled to pleasure and their bodies are beautiful and they're to be cherished and celebrated. I mean, men feel that way about their penises typically.
Yes.
They love their penises and they've been loving their penises since they were toddlers. So we really have to change the way we think about our genitals. Women have bad body image all over, and it's the genitals are no different.
And I'm going to give you the Dr. Marissa Beneficial Presence on the Planet Award just for that work that you do in helping women love themselves, especially down there. So thank you so much for that. Yeah. So let's talk about the G-spot. So because it, you know, this is there a G-spot or not? Apparently the research is mixed. G-spot actually is called the Grafenberg. Help me say that. Grafenberg spot. It is. Let's see. Let me read. This is from Wikipedia. Is characterized as an erogenous area of the vagina that, when stimulated, may lead to strong sexual arousal, powerful orgasms, and potential female ejaculation. Now, neither the G-spot nor the existence of female ejaculation has ever been proven, and sexologists and other researchers are concerned that women may consider themselves to be dysfunctional if they do not experience the G-spot, and emphasize that it is not normal to experience it. Comment?
I agree with all of that, and I think it's really quite fascinating and saddening that there could be still questions about this. Like, why do we not know? Why has the research not been definitive?
Right.
There has been a much greater shift towards focusing on women's sexuality over the last decade, but for the longest time, the focus was on male sexuality and on sexuality that had to do with reproduction. So a G-spot orgasm is sort of frivolous and not necessary for reproduction. So I think that may be one reason why there hasn't been a ton of research dedicated to it. But I think that many women swear that they've had the experience, and so we can honor that and say, give it a shot. Like, yeah, you don't want to define yourself as dysfunctional if you can't achieve it.
Right.
But if you have an adventurous spirit and a willing participant partner, or the right sex toy, because it's a kind of hard angle to get at on your own with your own arm.
Okay.
But go for it.
Okay. And so are there YouTube videos?
Yeah. Well, it's pretty straightforward. So it exists on the front wall of a woman's vagina, so like her belly as opposed to her back. And it's about 2.5 inches in. So if you inserted your fingers and went straight up, you would be probably in the right area. But it's difficult to get your arm that long and curved around. So many women use a toy, a sex toy that has sort of a hook on it that they can hold, and then it can press up on the spot.
Okay.
A little tip for people who are interested in finding the G-spot is it's easier if you have a partner do this and if you're lying on your stomach rather than on your back, because it takes some intense pressure in that area, and it's a little bit easier if you have someone who can get some traction pushing downward rather than sort of tickling upward.
Great. And if you've just tuned in and you're wondering what the heck is Dr. Marissa talking about and who the heck is on the air with her, you are listening to the very intelligent and very illuminating Dr. Robin Milhausen. She's the Canadian sex educator, and she's a professor at the University of Guelph. And I found her online in Google when I Googled sex and toys, and she's helping make pleasure G-rated on my Valentine's month theme, because orgasms are good for your health, and it is something that is not necessarily easily talked about, and I'm all about happiness 88% of the time, and I do believe that this is one area that can make us more happy, and that's why we're talking about it. So let's go on with when you have, so you just educated us. And I know one of the things that is, in addition to most women not being comfortable or not seeing themselves as beautiful in that area, is also not feeling comfortable sharing or trying to educate. It takes a very strong woman to say, honey, don't do that, do this. And again, I think that is, I don't know, part our nurturing, part our codependence, part our, the same reason why we fake is because it's somehow more important that you get to your goal than it is for us. And so how and when, and is there ever going to be a time where men get some kind of pleasure education, or all of us get? I would love it I would have loved it if my mom, I embarrass my girls all the time because I want to talk about this stuff, because I want them not to have the same hang-ups that I did that took decades to undo, to actually get to the point where I do, in your statistics, the more pleasure I give myself and am given, the better I feel about my body altogether. And that's an amazing thing. I don't have to, beat myself up and be very critical about my body size, my body weight. The more I have this experience and the more orgasms I have, it seems like the better I feel about my body. And there's no accident around that. So how can we get our society to a place where pleasure education is just as important as sex education?
Yes, that is $1 million question. I think that parents have a big role to play. So the fact that you're talking to your kids and emphasizing pleasure is, one half the battle. Actually, although it may feel awkward, in studies, young people often report that they want to see their parents as a source of sexual information or a place they can go if they have questions. So starting from an early age, one of the best things you can have is just good books on your shelf. So even if your kids are not comfortable talking to you directly, if there's a book about sex on the shelf, they will find it. And so it's key to have age-appropriate books on your shelf. But I remember growing up when my parents, they had The Joy of Sex on the shelf. And whenever they went out and I was an adolescent and I had friends over, the first thing we do is go and look at The Joy of Sex. And it actually was helpful because it it broke down what sex is and different positions and things. So I make sure with my young kids we have age-appropriate books about your body and relationships on our shelves, knowing at least that can be a way into a conversation.
Right.
And I think also talking to our girls and letting them know they have a clitoris. The fact that women or females have clitoris and can experience sexual pleasure. I didn't learn about a clitoris. I didn't learn there was such a thing until university. So I think we need to let females know this so that they can explore their own bodies and start to feel pleasure on their own rather than wait for some magical partner to make it happen.
Yes, but there's so many things that are working against us on that. Religion. Just again, excuse me, when we don't want to talk about it, but I remember when the internet first started. I'm dating myself. I use Oil of Olay, but I can remember, in class, the professor goes, "Okay, put anything you want in the search engine," and what do you know? Like 90% of the class put in sex. I mean, we don't want to talk about it, but we really do need to talk about it so we can talk about it in a way that it's not so dirty and not so negative. But anyway, so I hear music. We're going to take a little break to thank our sponsor for today's wonderful show and this episode. So I do we're trying new music today, but I wanted to thank Dr. Lori Ains. She's yay, I love this song. I wanted to bring it on. Dr. Lori is a successful family doctor practicing out of the land of enchantment in Albuquerque, New Mexico. She specializes in a holistic approach to health and healing, an expert and a sexpert. She's interviewed often on Fox News in Albuquerque. I have been blessed to meet and work with Dr. Lori, and her insight, practical wisdom, and humor make her a great coach and a doctor for you. You can find her at LoriAines.md.com. That's LoriAnes.md.com.
Jump off that exhausting hamster wheel and into balanced living with Doc on UBNradio.com.
And we're back. You're listening to Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa. And today we're continuing our Valentine's theme. And I'm auditioning. I'm moving from the Asian Oprah to the Asian Dr. Ruth for the month as we talk about sex and toys. We're not going to have time to talk about chocolate. Although I have to say the chocolate, I saw this really funny post that said the magic day in February is not February 14th, it's February 15th when all chocolate goes 75% off. But we are talking with Dr. Robin Milhausen out of University of Guelph. She's a professor there. She was born in the same hospital as I was. She's been lecturing all over the country, helping students understand sexuality and also women to feel better about their bodies, about their pleasure places, and for that I am grateful to you. So let's move to another question on gender differences, because it does seem like it is easier for men to see sex as just sex or to enjoy sex as just sex, where booty calls for women seem a little more difficult. Like I was talking to a friend and they were talking about another girlfriend. It's like, wow, I wish I could be like her. She just drops it like a guy does, and she can, when she's feeling amorous or horny, she just goes and takes care of it, and it's a booty call and there's no feelings attached, there's nothing so to get in the way of the same goal of orgasming as a guy. So is it true that women have a little different relationship with orgasms and sex than men?
Well, one thing for sure is there's definitely a perception out in North America today that men and women are very different with regard to sex, and that men and women see sex very differently, that men have a physical orientation to sex and that women have an emotional orientation to sex. And I recently finished a study that was just published in the Journal of Sex Research in 2013 about these rules for sex that men and women perceive to exist, and the idea that men are physical and women are emotional was really strongly believed. But we are seeing a narrowing with regard to gender differences in sexuality. Even like the last bastion of gender difference in terms of masturbation, a recent study out of the university, or Indiana University, showed that women were masturbating more and at ages than was previously thought. So it used to be that was the one thing that was very, very, very different for men and women, that men would masturbate early and much more frequently. But we're even seeing an increase in that. So I think that society makes a big deal of gender differences, and we believe them to be there, and therefore they kind of exist. But there's a lot of similarities in terms of the ways men and women see sex. Recent studies on motivations for sex suggest that both men and women do have sex for emotional and pleasure reasons, and a study by Meston and Buss showed that 4 to 5 of the top reasons for sex were the same for men and women. 8 out of the top 10 were the same for men and women. So pleasure and physical pleasure and emotional connection are important to both genders.
In that, the recent movie Her has it supports your data, because the main character, it shows his desire that it goes beyond just the orgasm. It goes to that he doesn't even need to see the woman. He just needs to feel that connection, and they take care of themselves. Very interesting. I thought that, okay, if that's true, then, and again, I'm going to bring up balance for any of you. You're reacting, it's like, oh my God, you're talking about having sex all the time, and this is a problem with sexual addiction, and that's all you think about. We're not talking about that. I'm talking about bringing the other extreme, where we don't talk about it at all, and we don't talk about pleasure, and really being okay with talking about how to masturbate so that you can come and have an orgasm and feel that pleasure that is part of being human and part of life and a gift of life. At the same time, the emotional connection, having sex without love. So is it shallow, I guess is the question. Is it shallow to just want sex without the lovemaking?
Probably every person has a different answer to that question, and you'd have to decide, everyone would have to decide what's right for them. From my perspective, what's important is that both partners know what we're here for. So if for me, it's just all about the sex, but for you, it's about love and intimacy, and you're becoming quite attached to me, then I feel like it's not ethical of me to proceed just getting the sex without being clear about what I'm here for. So I think if both people know what the relationship's about and both can give informed consent to participate in the relationship, then absolutely not. We have relationships with people we just, go to the movies with, or we just knit with, or we just...
How'd you know I knit?
So this could be, we could just, it might be very healthy for us to have people that we just have sex with for pleasure, because it could be unreasonable to think that we could have one partner who could meet all of our emotional, physical, relational needs. So I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with having sex with a person and having it be just about the pleasure.
So
I think it could be pretty awesome with the right partner.
Are okay. You agree with Dr. Pat Allen. Booty calls are a necessary and good part of life. I'm still working on that one. It's difficult for me to have sex without some kind of emotional connection. And then if that emotional connection isn't returned, then I begin to, like you say, feel like that unevenness. And so, but on the other hand, if you have really great sex with someone, but they're not at a place where they can be compatible with you, then can you have sex with them? And as you're saying, it is kind of a personal thing. So
yeah, and I think there's nothing wrong with being where you are at all. In fact, just knowing that you're there helps you to make choices that work for you. So that there are people who are going to always need to connect sex and love, and there are going to be people who never want to. And knowing what works for you and being able to communicate honestly about what you want and need makes it all okay.
Right. And you actually wrote an article in 2008, Best Health Magazine, Sexually Mismatched: What to Do When Your Libido Doesn't Match Your Partner's. And I get a lot of questions about this in my private practice. Either he wants it, or actually lately it's been more she wants it and he doesn't want it. So does that mean, or I want to make love and he just wants to have sex? What do I do in those occasions?
Yes, a big problem. A big problem. Desire discrepancy is a big problem in relationships, and it can lead the person with lower desire to feel like there's something wrong with them, or they have some kind of dysfunction, when maybe it's a relational issue. And what are the chances we're both going to want to eat the exact same food at the exact same time in the exact same proportions in a relationship? Unlikely. So why do we think we're going to have the exact same sexual appetite for the same exact kind of sex at the same time in the same duration, et cetera? So I think it's good if you can communicate through this and figure out some way to negotiate a compromise that works for you. And sex can be a really good, glue for a relationship, and it can connect you and give you emotional rewards in addition to physical ones. So we have this idea that we only have sex when we have burning lust, and sex therapists differ on this, actually. Some say you should not go there unless you're at peak arousal, and some say, maybe that's not important, because if we waited until we were at peak arousal, we'd never have it. But I think if we wait, we see women who are, tired and overworked and may not have an interest in sex. If we waited until we were, ravenous with desire, we might indeed not do it. But if we can put that aside for a few minutes and connect with our partner and feel loved and cherished and experience physical pleasure, then we, may have, better relational health. We may sleep better, all those things you talked about. So it's a controversial thing in research, whether you should have sex if you're not really interested in it, because it sounds like this is sexual assault, this is sexual violence.
Right.
But it could just be that we're being compliant, because I know sometimes I'm going to want it and you're not, and sometimes you're going to want it and I'm not, and it'll all even out in the end. So maybe I'm not raring to go right now, but in about 5 minutes I bet I will be. So let's do it.
Well, I do know that if I were to design a sexual education, a pleasure education program, that most women, if there's enough foreplay and if there's enough, words of absolute adoration, there's nothing more to rev me up. I know, in a number of other women that I know. And so for men, if you can put that as part of your repertoire, there's nothing more sexy than a man that says, I want to take care of you before I take care of myself. That's personal.
You're getting me going just hearing it. Yes, you're right.
Nothing more.
You're right.
Nothing more.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
And then the desire will absolutely come, literally. And I think too, the women, if we can just take the courage to say, this is what I would like, and not feel embarrassed about it, or I knew I was going to be in an awkward situation about telling a little too much about myself. But I do remember a guy that I thought I was madly in lust with. I was definitely in lust with. But I remember him saying, don't go there. Like, don't touch, don't, and grab my hand. And it was like, wow. So if we can get over that, it took me a long time to get over it, to the place where I would say, that feels good, or try this, or please, don't, then, and if a guy doesn't take that defensively, and actually receives it in the spirit of, we're in this together, I want to pleasure you, I want you to pleasure me, then we will be less likely to fake, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And you think we don't have to just jump right into saying, do this, not that. We can give small cues. Like, we can give minimal encouragers, like a little more extra moan, a little extra hip tilt when something feels really good. We can kind of shift away when something feels less good. After the sex is over, we can say, oh my gosh, what was so great was this and this and that. And so we're giving our partner clues as to what works. And often this kind of communication works better when it's not right in the heat of the sexual moment, because that can be like a big wet blanket. But if you can talk afterwards and highlight the stuff that went really well, those are the things that are more likely to happen again in the next sexual encounter.
Although there is the danger of it getting a little too clinical. I mean, that's like afterwards dissecting the whole the whole experience. I don't know if I guess I would have to take that really carefully.
It depends for your partner. I'm a sex researcher and I'm married to a psychologist, so nothing's too clinical.
I was going to ask you if we had time about that, as far as how does your husband deal with what you do? And I know you have 2 beautiful children, so obviously you do have sex.
Well, or at least once, about eight years ago, and again 3 years later. But I think I experience the same difficulties that all busy women do, and that all busy couples do. Having young kids, being in a long-term relationship, these are major challenges for couples. So I experience all of those just the same, but it's nice that we can talk through them. I think that is one thing that has been helpful for us, is I'm aware of the difficulties and we can talk about them comfortably. So even though the same exact challenges come up and hit us in the face as probably every other couple out there, we maybe are a little more equipped to communicate through them.
Right. And I have to share one paradigm shift for me around, what it's like to have great sex, make love, just in the whole dating process. Is, I used to think, well, the most important thing is to get the dinner and being taken out and all that, and then I would pay for it afterwards. And that's where he was getting all the pleasure. And what I've come to realize as I get more comfortable with myself and with having pleasure and it being okay, is that it's just as fun to order out and then spend a lot of time just playing, and that being the whole date. And so for me, that's my little living out loud, or loving out loud on the air, is the homework for any women who find themselves feeling like they're not getting the kind of cherishing from sex, is to only, just to shift our own thinking around that, and seeing if pleasure can't be a joint date, or that whole exploration can't be pleasurable without the whole society, dinner date and then duty dating. So we're almost out of time. I really would like you to be able to share what my listeners can help with, or what you're doing and how we can find you and all of that.
Sure. I would love it to find some new followers amongst your audience on Twitter. So if they are on Twitter, they can follow me at Dr. Robin M. My website name is long and convoluted, but if they Google Robin Milhausen, they'll be able to find me and see some things that I'm up to. But I think Twitter's the best way now to hear about recent talks, recent sex studies that I'm involved with, or other things about sexuality in the media. So follow me at Dr. Robin M.
Great. And thank you so much for coming on today. That applause is very loud. So I would love to have you again. Don't know when. I actually would really love to do this once a month. I'm really so close to having a monthly talk to make pleasure G-rated, but I do wish you the best. Say hi to Canada for me, and
thank you.
thank you again for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom, Dr. Robin Milhausen.
Great. It was a pleasure. Nice to meet you, and I do look forward to the next time already.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Okay, that was illuminating, and it went really well. I did not say too much that I shouldn't have. that was my prep meditation this morning. I'm going to wrap up today's show with a few balance bars as usual. The first is to thank Dorian Fletcher, who is a magnificent artist, for my beautiful earrings. She does catered art for jewelry, and you can find her. I did have her sponsor a show a few weeks back, but did not have the contact information. So it's DOURIEAN.com. A couple of you have emailed asking for that information. So it's DOURIEAN.com. IEAN.com. So if you did not get something for Valentine's from someone else, it is not too late to get something for yourself for Valentine's. And special art that is fit just for you is certainly fits that bill. She actually put tourmaline and peridot, not knowing my birthstone was peridot, which I thought was quite synchronistic. All right, and let's see what else. Oh, next week. Next week, yes. You notice I started with a good to do EMS for Baja for the beginning of February for those who want a great project to contribute to. Go to iTunes for that, or YouTube for that first episode in February, to Dr. Pat Allen, where we talked about booty calls and blowjobs. And then today, where we talked about G-spots and orgasms. Next week, we are having the founder of OM. And OM is the first sound in the universe, and it also stands for orgasmic meditation. Yes, I am determined to make pleasure G-rated and be the Asian Dr. Ruth. Nicole Dadone will be coming on the air next week, so please don't miss that. Do we teach men how to pleasure women? Yes. So we will be talking about that specifically, and I will see you next Tuesday, or listen to you or talk to you next Tuesday at naturally high noon on Take My Advice. I'm Not Using It. Get Balanced with Dr. Marissa Pei. That's P for positive, EI. And go to my website for any information about any of the things I'm doing in Sedona or teaching at Agape, or any way that you would like to meet me on the beach. Just go to forbalance.org, because it's all about peace. It's all about balance and joy. Enjoy. Peace in and out.
Since May